Hi, I'm Josh Bakey, Policy Editor for Farm Progress, and joining me today is the newly installed Chief of the Natural Resource Conservation Service, Colton Buckley. How are you today, Colton?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me, Josh.
I think you're a new name to a lot of people in agriculture. I understand you're one of the youngest people to hold this position. Just tell us real briefly about your background and what led you to come into this role.
Sure, thank you. Well, you are right. I'm the youngest chief we've had of the agency by roughly about a year or so, other than Arlen Lancaster, who served as the second chief during the W. Bush second term. I grew up on my grandparents' cow-calf operation about 45 minutes west of Waco, Texas, in an area of Coryell County, Gatesville, the spur capital of the state. I've got a bachelor's degree in agricultural services and development, a master's degree in communication. I started my conservation and ag career as a campaign manager and senior advisor to the Texas Commissioner of Agriculture in his first term, and then really fell in love with conservation. Worked my way up from local and state organizations to end up being the chief executive officer of the National Association of Resource Conservation Development Councils, which was a nonprofit network created by Congress to support the work of NRCS, and was actually those nonprofits were located in our service centers from 1962 to 2011. When I came into the administration, I was the first Trump appointee at NRCS as chief of staff. I then was elevated to be the associate chief, our chief operating officer role. And then a handful of weeks ago, the secretary president named me the chief of the agency.
Well, congratulations on that. Nice to meet you. I'm actually not too far away from Waco. I'm up in the Dallas area, so I know the Gatesville well. So,
Great, wonderful.
Well, let's just jump right into it. I know you have a big announcement that's coming out. By the time this airs, it'll be out, listing new priorities for the NRCS. Can you tell us a little bit about that announcement and what you're aiming to do at the organization?
Yes, sir. Well, I worked hand in hand with our previous chief, Aubrey Betancourt, as we developed the chief's priorities, as they're called, the guiding light for the agency, both for our career employees across the countryside and doing national headquarters duties, as well as our 501c3 for-profit higher education partners for what we're looking at doing during our time here. The top priority I have is preserving and protecting agricultural land, as we lose 5,000 acres on average a day to development in the continental United States alone, 2,000 of that being prime farmland, 1,020 acres of the 5,000 being in our home state of Texas. So I'm laser focused with the secretary on building out strategies and plans to support American producers and keeping working land and working hand. The other priorities are shifting to outcome-based conservation and farmer empowerment, recenter field engagement and strengthen technical expertise, expand wildlife conservation and outdoor access, strengthen partnerships by streamlining processes and accountability, and optimize mission delivery by strengthening workforce culture, and then obviously modernizing NRCS infrastructure and technology. Several of these come from my predecessor's time when we built the priorities together, with two new ones largely focused on wildlife conservation and outdoor access and the work that sportsman groups do alongside private landowners, farmers, and ranchers to support rural economies, and then focusing on strengthening the workforce culture here at the agency to make sure that they have the tools, the technology, and the training to support our producers.
I'm curious when you say outcome-based conservation. Can you go in a little bit about what exactly that entails? Because I think sometimes that's a term that might mean different things to different people. What does outcome-based conservation mean to you?
So the major thing is, for a long time, this agency has focused itself on what makes sense in dollars spent or acres enrolled in our programs. We've got to support moving beyond that and tracking real improvements in water management, soil health, natural vitality. When you look at the regenerative pilot program and being able to provide an outcomes report from the agency to producers, they can take that to the marketplace. So major corporations, McDonald's, Walmart, Costco, et cetera, are promoting to their suppliers for things to be farmed farmed or grown or produced in a certain way to support their bottom dollar. The agency, in voluntary locally led conservation, can equip producers with these reports, with these more static outcomes on the actual improvements they're doing in their land by supporting conservation and partnering in NRCS's cost share programs to take to the marketplace the improvements they're doing and why the American agriculture product by far is the best ag product across the globe.
Now, when I talk to farmers across the country, one of the concerns I've heard is staffing levels at NRCS offices. I've had a couple of people tell me they consider it to be a crisis. Obviously you have an ambitious agenda here. Are you going to prioritize getting more boots on the ground to help, carry out this mission and fill some of these offices that may not have staffing at the moment?
Yes, sir. As you see in the coming weeks and months when the agency's reorganization plan is announced, we are laser focused in solidarity with the Secretary's mission and vision to support our field office staff. And an individual who started my conservation career from the field now to the way of chief, I deeply understand and value the work that our local field offices and field staff are doing. Another big piece of that is the amount of money and partnerships that we have with other entities in the conservation space, both traditional and non-traditional, that engage in that support, and making sure that the taxpayer and the American farmer, rancher, private landowner are getting the best bang for their buck in terms of those investments the agency is making in those partners to support us in the field. With things like One Farmer, One File coming out in the coming months, as well as the integrated field tool, we're finally getting the agency out of the tradition of the Dust Bowl era into the 21st century and using modern market techniques to get away from filing cabinets and into the pasture to support the American farmer.
Do I know this has been kind of an ongoing priority at USDA, going more digital, kind of streamlining some of these application processes. Overall, do you think farmers have been receptive to this? Has there been a learning curve, getting some of these, especially some of these older farmers, switched over to doing more things online, or is that something that they've been, clamoring for and welcome the change?
I think a lot of producers have been clamoring for this, so they're not having to leave, during farming season when they're cutting hay, when they're plowing, what have you, or herding up cows like we would back home in Central Texas, to have to go into the office, to have to fill out paperwork or sign on the dotted line. The transformations that we're able to make, obviously, we'll still continue to have offices open, folks there to meet and greet, whether it's NRCS staff, our sister agency with Farm Service Agency, FSA, or the Soil and Water Conservation Districts across a myriad of other partners. For those that want to stick with the traditional pen and paper, so to speak, but for other producers that are early adopters, more technology savvy, and the up and coming next generation of producers that are used to being kind of in the high tech AI age, so to speak, this will cut down on bureaucracy and allow them to spend more time doing what they love, working the land.
Sure. One other thing I wanted to ask you about is, funding for various grant programs. Obviously, kind of you're coming into this. Well, you were at NRCS before already, but when the Trump administration started, a lot of grants were put on hold. Some of the language has changed, and as I understand it, a lot of those grants on hold. Money has been received, but there are still people waiting to receive grants already. They've been promised in the past. Can you give me an update, just kind of where NRCS is on going through that process and getting people the grant money that they had been promised previously?
Sure. So are you speaking in terms of individual producers in cost share program or 501c3 other nonprofit entities receiving funding from the agency?
Specifically individual producers, for example, ones that have taken grant money to complete certain projects in the hopes of getting, repaid by the agency. I've talked to a couple of people that said, they're still awaiting, they've completed the project, waiting for inspectors to come out and confirm that they've completed projects to get, the rest of their funding.
Sure. So we are laser focused on making sure that producers that are implementing practices or have implemented practices are being paid in the agreement that they've made with the agency. As you well know, the agency and the entire department went through the longest government shutdown led by the opposing party, then the administration, which put us in a place where our folks could not be out in the field working alongside producers. We're getting to the kind of final touching point on the handful of producers that maybe have not received their EQIP or CSP payments. And as chief, we've put together a strike force to reinforce and focus on making sure those individuals are paid expeditiously as they deserve.
I think that's about all the time we have for here. I appreciate you being on. Thank you so much, and best of luck to you in the new role.
All right. Take care. Thank you, sir.